My name's Coffy.
Hello, ladies, and welcome back. Today, we'll be talking about how women, yes, us, how we are the divinely chosen eugenicists. It is our core responsibility to not have children with the men who we know are utterly and completely useless, and how it is our responsibility to literally filter out the incels, and how we should not be bullied into having children with unworthy men. So, in all this incel crisis that people will talk about, how so many men are going sexless, that is how it should be. And the only reason why it hasn't been that way is because those sexless men become increasingly violent. In other times of history, we had ways of dealing with those men. We would send them off to wars where they would die. They would become eunuchs, so they would never be able to reproduce, and that testosterone in them would not have been there because they wouldn't have had anything to produce that. In today's society, we do not have nearly as many ways of dealing with those men. That is why I strongly believe in the prison industrial complex because we're going to have to lock a lot of motherfuckers up. But even if that infrastructure didn't exist in today's society, that infrastructure to deal with the useless men of every generation, there was a pool of women who only married purely because of financial reasons. That pool of women no longer exists. Those women who would have stayed in marriages because they had no other way to take care of themselves, those women can now work. We should not be surprised that a group of men just are not getting laid. I don't know why people are acting all crazy. And I don't know why people dismiss women's mating strategies. Like, people act weird when women do certain things. And I'm like, if you were a woman, you would do those same things. I don't believe sex workers work. I don't believe in any of those nonsense liberal talking points. But if you were a pretty girl and all your life you've only ever been treated badly because of how pretty you were, and you see that there's a massive demand for porn, and you realize you could, or you think you could make some money from selling nudes, why wouldn't you? And when you see some girls making six figures every fucking month from trying porn, why wouldn't you? And this isn't me saying that every girl should become an OnlyFans model. No. I'm just trying to say it's so wild to see men who literally peacock at every point they can peacock, post pictures with fancy cars, post pictures with awards, post pictures with beautiful women, make it seem like the women who attempt to make wealth of the porn addicted men that are full of society, as if those women are ridiculous, mad, or stupid, when those men would have probably done the same thing. And I would also like to say that it makes sense for women to only aim for chads in this world where there's an increasing economic disparity. Like, let me paint something for you. Elon Musk is a power law of a power law. Elon Musk is magnitudes richer than Kanye West. Kanye West is magnitudes richer than a software engineer, like a software engineer manager that's clearing like 500,000 a year. And that person is 10 times richer than like the average American. It literally makes sense for a woman if she had the opportunity to be the side chick of the software engineer that clears 500,000 a year, or to be the main chick for a man that only clears 50K a year, to literally be the side chick of the software engineer and make 250K. And I'm not saying this to, I don't know, advocate for side chickdom. It's saying that I find it so bizarre that people make women's dating and mating strategy to be weird when the incentives align for certain behavior. And we never use that same confusion when it comes to men. Men are allowed to scream to the rooftops that they want younger women and they want variety. That is their nature. And they say female nature, we're far more empathetic, we're far more emotional. But if a woman says, I'm an emotional woman, because of that, I had sex with the gym instructor man because he was just so charming. But you know what? I'm the emotional kind. That's just my nature. And since you're a man and you're the logical kind, why don't you just forgive me instead of undermining our family? No, we justify the man's use of violence against that woman. I say all this because I've noticed that we live in a patriarchy without patriarchs. The only reason why we had patriarchs is because they were willing to sell women off to these lower achieving men so that they don't burn down society. Now we have prisons, so lock those motherfuckers up. I have a bad theory, and I would love to talk to you men about these theories. That one of the reasons why those men are not nearly as violent is because of porn. Those men are so inundated by porn that they're just staying in their basement being incels. And with AI being able to generate so much more porn, we honestly will never have this incel rebellion that we think we're gonna have because those men will be inundated with so much porn that honestly they won't know what to do with themselves. But I've been saying that we live in a patriarchy without patriarchs, is that like so many of us have to reckon with the fact that That competent man that a lot of us grew up thinking that men were does not exist. Women by default are more competent without training. Women are far more self-starters. The only reason why men did those things in the past was because the infrastructure in society incentivized them to do it. Without that infrastructure, they are not doing those things. But you don't need infrastructure to teach women kindness. Women just do it by default. You don't need infrastructure to teach women competence or taking care of a home. We just do it by default. We are the actual leaders. Human beings would rather uphold delusions than deal with reality. We will force men into patriarchal positions that they should never be in. A large scale example of that was the American election where Donald Trump lost to Hillary. We wanted the patriarch of Donald Trump. We wanted this big business leader man instead of a woman who literally had years of experience over him. You can hate Hillary, you can hate everything about her. And you can even say she's part of the institution. But even if she were to lose, she shouldn't have lost to fucking Trump, a man who was not qualified in any way to occupy that position. You're going to see a lot of women date men who they think have the inklings or inclinations to become patriarchs and be woefully disappointed when these men do not meet up with that. I recently saw a TikToker that literally committed suicide. And I know that suicide is not something that like happens just out of a whim. It is something that like deeply emotional issues and things that I can't even imagine. But when the woman released a statement, she talked about how the family had been going through financial issues. As someone who's a core contributor to my family's well being, a lot of men really don't want to be the ones in charge of the entire family's well being. That is not an easy position to be in. So it's so wild how we know the demands of patriarchy. We know that a lot of men cannot meet those demands, but we'll rather use affirmative action to put men in positions of patriarchs. And when we see them woefully failing, we tell women to instead encourage them, support them, just find ways of keep on padding the grade so that they eventually become patriarchs instead of dealing with the fact that they are not. And what's going to happen is that I doubt those men there will ever be some kind of revolt because these men will just be point sicked. But in case there is, I want women to actually be able to arm and defend themselves. Women in the West, you are actually no longer safe. As a woman, as an immigrant in the West, I actually in the West because I wanted a better life. And whenever they bring these immigrants, they should just leave the men behind and only bring women and children. But basically, now that you have these men so much more violent than the men in the West, you have to protect yourself. If you're an American woman, you have to stay strapped. You have to have your guns. You have to stay strapped. If you're a European woman, you have to protect yourself. Try to find ways that you can learn about the laws in your country and try to find ways where you can arm and protect yourself. If you have the opportunity of a second passport, even if you're like an Irish woman and you have the opportunity for an Italian passport, if you're an American woman and can get a European passport, if you just can get a second passport, do so. Get your second passport. And then accumulate as much wealth as possible because a lot of people think the world is already set, that the map of the world has already been shaped. My dear, it has not. Some countries will rise and fall, and you want the opportunity to be able to move quickly. And that will be it for today. Women, we're in a patriarchy without patriarchs. Move accordingly. In the newsletter, there'll be the base tweets of the week. And also for paid subscribers, I am going through Erica Badu and how we can be more like her and what we can learn from literally one of the greatest seductresses in history. With that in mind, I will see you all next week.